Unless you've been living under a rock for the last few years, you've experienced and probably even participated in the national conversation around immigration. The conversation has only become more heated and more divisive in the last few months as some politicians have been increasing their rhetoric around the quote-unquote caravan of people passing through Latin America. The conversation around immigration in the United States is nuanced and it's tricky, and it always has been. But we've seen a growth of fear-mongering and bad faith reporting around the issue, and it hasn't helped anything. This week, I'm so excited to have my friend Gustavo Guerrero on the podcast to have what I hope is a healthier conversation around immigration, and even more specifically, the immigrant experience. We don't claim to have all of the answers, but I love that we got to ask some great questions. Gustavo Guerrero was born in a small town in Honduras in April of 1992. After being raised by his aunt, Gustavo became an immigrant to America at the age of 12 after he moved to South Carolina to live with his parents. Gustavo is a talented musician, and this is actually how we first got connected, and his love for music became apparent early in his life when, at the age of 6, he created his own drum set out of paint cans and kitchen pots and pans. While attending high school, he found refuge in the music room as he learned more about music, himself, and North American culture. As a dreamer, he is passionate about advocating for human rights, immigration reform, and civil and political rights. His bilingual cover of John Lennon's hit song Imagine with YouTuber Alex G has reached over 4 million views. And in 2017, the DNC chose their cover as part of their campaign to fight for the DREAM Act to protect almost 800,000 immigrants. Gustavo has performed for and met with prominent political figures like Senators Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders. I'm Branden Harvey, and this is Sounds Good. This is the weekly podcast where we have conversations with inspiring people who are rejecting cynicism and using their lives to make an impact. Sounds Good is not your typical 3 Steps to Success podcast. We don't host this podcast for the sake of leaving you with bullet points on self-improvement. We deeply believe that our lives are more complex than that. And so we show up here on Sounds Good to ask big questions, dive into nuance, and learn from each other's stories. One of Gustavo's favorite quotes is from Anne Lamott. She said, "Every time we choose the good action or response, the decent, the valuable, it builds incrementally to renewal, resurrection, the place of newness, freedom, justice." With that in mind, let's jump straight into this conversation. Did you ever watch that documentary? It's called Being George Clooney or something like that.
I don't think so.
So it's about voice actors.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
the
wow.
people who when George Clooney does a movie and they want to make it, they want to dub it over in Spanish.
Yeah.
Who they bring in to do George Clooney's voice in Spanish. And then who they bring in to do it in Portuguese and in French.
Yeah.
And all of those people who are it's a fascinating.
Yeah,
It might even be free on Netflix. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up watching cartoons in Spanish.
Okay.
So it was always the same guy. Whoever does Homer Simpson in Spanish, it's like Homer Simpson in Spanish.
That's
There's
amazing.
nobody else that does it. It's really cool.
There's a TV show on Netflix called Money Heist.
Yeah.
And it's made in Spain. And I think it's in Spanish. But I watched the whole thing dubbed in English.
Oh, wow.
And I loved it. It's
That's
one
so
of my
funny.
favorite shows.
Yeah.
It's a terrible show, but I love heist movies.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool that it's backwards. It's not
it was
made in
nice being
English.
backwards. I don't think that it was. I don't know what it's like to be dubbed the other way. It didn't seem like a very great dub, but it was good enough that I could follow it all.
I think that you have issues when you're bilingual with that stuff.
That makes
because
sense.
when you're not bilingual, you don't see the difference. For example, there's certain things. You remember the movie Coco? Coco?
Yes.
So that movie in English is phenomenal, but if you watch it in Spanish, and if you understand Spanish, it's just a whole different level of amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Because the movie is supposed to be in Mexico.
Yeah.
And in English it makes sense and it's cool. They mix some words, but anyways, yeah. So
do you think it was almost kind of primarily written in Spanish?
I think it was primarily written in English, but with
Okay.
a bilingual perspective,
Great.
because the people who made it are like bilingual people in
Yeah,
Los
they brought in
Angeles.
a good team.
Yeah, yeah,
Because 10 years ago they would have just had all white people
yeah,
making it,
yeah. Oh no, it
and
was
now
like a
they're
whole
like
diverse
being a little
team.
bit more thoughtful.
Yeah, but when you're bilingual, you have those issues. Like some things
That
sound
makes
better in
sense.
Spanish, and that's why I'm doing Spanish music right now,
Yeah,
because I know that I could deliver better content, at least with my words, in Spanish than in English. So
yeah,
I had to recognize that. I had to come to terms with myself and say, no, I should do Spanish music first, and then figure out. And who knows? Maybe I
yeah,
never do English music. Like
yeah.
I wouldn't
And
be.
that's
I
great.
would be cool with it.
Yeah,
I mean, right now in Billboard Top 100 or whatever, I mean, there's at least like 15 Spanish songs
that is
completely in
true.
Spanish. Like,
Yeah,
it's the
that's
best time for
fascinating.
Spanish music right now in the world.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, right now I think top Drake did a song completely in Spanish,
really.
and it was like top
Does
5.
Does he speak
He
Spanish, or
doesn't
did he
speak
learn it
Spanish.
for
He
the
just
song?
learned it for the song. He
That's
doesn't speak Spanish.
Fascinating.
But ever
Yeah.
since Despacito with Justin Bieber,
Yeah,
that was like and I'm even though I wasn't really that big of a fan of the song,
Yeah.
even though it's fun, that was like a really great thing for Spanish musicians,
yeah,
because it opened up the ears of Americans or English speakers who were not necessarily open to Spanish music at
Yeah.
first. And so it was great for us.
Well, and even most pop music isn't necessarily lyrically
Yeah.
driven, and so I
Yeah.
don't know what they're saying in
Yeah, yeah.
Despacito. Like I speak
Yeah.
English and a tiny bit of French,
Yeah.
but
it's
but I
fun.
love it.
Yeah,
Like it's
fun.
great.
Yeah.
And so I mean, and it's really similar to the approach that K-pop has.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
K-pop is
Especially for North
interesting.
Americans.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because K-pop is very like multi-genre,
Yeah.
multilingual sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's now that with globalization and the
Yeah.
internet, the way that we can all connect through entertainment and music is
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I started listening to this big, I'm sure you know their name, I don't remember. It's a big K-pop band. Anyways, it has nothing to do with what we're saying, but it was like interesting because like I have so much music
Yeah.
influences in my head. Like I grew up in Latin American music, and it's like wow, it's so much music in my head, so I
Yeah.
can use a little bit of that. That's why when you hear my songs in this EP, will be like, what is this? It's like
I'm
a whole
so pumped.
It's like a mix, but it done really well. Like 'cause my producers did a great job, like limiting myself. They
That's
were like,
good.
no, you can't go that far.
That's
I wanted to
good.
do like this like folk, completely folk, like South American folk song, and they were like, it's great if you were like authentically South American and you were doing that kind of music.
Yeah.
So you had to stay true to also who you are. Like bring your influences,
Yeah.
but also put your imprint in your music.
That makes sense.
You know.
Yeah, especially is this your first EP?
This is my first. Yeah.
So that makes sense. Also, though, let's back up a little bit and how did you get started in the world of music?
Yeah, I think it started in church.
Okay.
My grandpa is a pastor, and I remember one time the worship leader had to move to a different town.
How old do you think you were?
I mean, I was 8.
Okay.
Like I was about 8 or 9, and the worship leader had to move to a different town, and my grandpa needed a new piano player, or somebody that plays the keys.
Huh.
And but at the time I was already playing drums, like until I transitioned from drums to piano because the worship leader moved, and I remember being so angry about it because I love drums. I wanted
Yeah.
to be a professional drummer. I think most musicians start like that, they want to
Yeah.
be a professional drummers, and then like my grandpa was like, no, we need a piano player now, and then
And when did you start playing drums, you think? What age?
I started playing drums like when I was maybe 5,
That's
but like on like
outrageous.
paint cans.
Is
you
your
know?
family musical?
So here's a really interesting thing about my family. My grandfather was a very well-known folk musician in Honduras.
Oh.
So he wrote a lot of like national folk songs.
The same grandfather that was a pastor.
No, this is my grandfather from my mother's side.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a whole completely different side of the
Got it.
family. But he was a folk musician in Honduras. So I think I
Fascinating.
inherited from him.
Yeah.
Even though he never recognized us as like their grandchildren because he had a lot of them. He was just a wild man.
Th- Is it
So-
wrong to say that this sounds very similar to Coco?
I mean, it sounds very similar. That's why I cried so many times during
Yeah.
that movie. Because even though Coco at the end, you realize,
Yeah.
sorry for the spoilers, but at the end you realize that like it's not about fame or
Yeah.
chasing money, but it's about family. And my grandpa was always about not necessarily fame, but woman. Like he was just a womanizer in general. Like and so, but he was he was a really talented man, and he did a lot of great things for the country of Honduras
Got it.
as a musician.
Fascinating.
So yeah.
And it was in your blood, and so you played drums, and then one day you had to change over to piano.
Yeah, it was always because of out of necessity. Like the piano
Huh.
player left, but yet my grandpa didn't tell me that he also needed a worship leader. He just randomly told me on a Sunday morning, like, "Hey, can you sing this song?" And I mean, I still don't consider myself a trained. I'm not a trained singer. You know, I sing because I have to.
I think
But
you're a great singer.
thank you very
I
much.
love your voice.
Thank you very much. So my grandpa was like, "I think can you sing?" I remember this song. I remember that song, "Nothing by the Blood of Jesus" or something
Yeah.
like that. It was that song in
Okay.
Spanish, obviously. And he told me, like, "Could you sing this song like today?" I was like, "What?" You know. But at the time, you don't really think about it much. You
Yeah.
just do what your grandpa tells you or what the pastor wanted. And that was the same for me when I transitioned to guitar. You know, it was I play guitar, bass, piano, and a little bit of drums, and it's been the same reason why I play this instrument.
Wow.
Is because sometimes we had a piano player but not a bass player, so I was like, I had to jump into the bass, etc. And I feel like it's very a lot of musicians can relate to that because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people start that way in church. You know, so yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. So at what age do you feel like you had learned all of these instruments?
I think I'm still obviously you can never stop
Yeah,
learning,
no.
but I feel like I took the guitar as my main instrument the moment I started writing songs because you
Okay.
could take it different places. So when I was 12, I started writing songs, mostly church music, and that's when the guitar became my main instrument. And to this day, I think I don't play much piano as much. I'm fluent at piano, but I don't use it anymore because I don't necessarily. Right now, this season in my life,
Yeah.
the guitar has taken the lead
Yeah.
as the main instrument.
And I mean, you're a great guitar player too.
Thank you very much. I tell people that I play only what I need. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I always hire lead guitar players when I'm doing like live shows, for example, because they play great lead, but sometimes they don't seem to know how to play the things I play. It's so
Hmm.
interesting. Some
Yeah.
of them are trained musicians. They're like, I don't understand what you're trying to do, or they tell me like, oh, this is really awesome. Like, how do you come up with this? I'm like, it just sounded cool.
And so you're like fully self-taught?
Yeah. Even though I was in training jazz when I was in high school, I did jazz band. So
Okay.
I had 4 years of, I guess, if you want to count that, high school training.
I
You
think
know,
it counts. Yeah.
yeah, I was playing piano for the jazz band. And,
Got it.
yeah, and then I was in choir in school, but that's my only training. And then like on my own YouTube videos.
Yep. No.
So
YouTube's amazing.
yeah, thank God for YouTube.
So at what age did you move to the United States from Honduras?
So I was 12, about to be 13, when my parents brought me here. They were already living in South Carolina. And so
And you were in Honduras.
Yeah.
Were you like living with your grandparents?
I was living with my aunt and my uncle,
Okay.
which for me, they were my parents because
Okay.
my parents left me when I was really young, I think 6 or 5 years
Mm.
old. So for me, the only parents I knew were my uncle and my aunt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And did they have kids too?
Yeah, it was they had two little kids, two little boys. So my younger cousins.
Okay.
They're like my brothers now.
What do you remember life being like outside of learning music and stuff?
Yeah, life in Honduras at the time, because I know it's changed a lot. I come from a really small town. Like we have dirt roads, but yet it's not like tribal style. Like
Yeah.
you still have McDonald's and all this like American things. You know?
Yeah.
You can find a McDonald's anywhere you go in the world. But we had a very, very minimalistic, simple life. Like life was always about getting up, having breakfast, going to school for me or my parents. My uncle, you see, I call
Yeah.
them my parents. My uncle and my aunt, they own like they had a company that built doors. Like it's interesting, and all types of doors. And so they would do that kind of work. And so yeah, life was very simple. Just riding my bicycle. I remember always having my real parents in the U.S., but I liked it more because of what they sent me. They would send me
Mm.
cool stuff.
That's
like
awesome.
the Converse All Star shoes, for example. Like I think I was the first one in my town to have them.
Wow.
So in a way, I was kind of spoiled by my parents living in the U.S. It would put me in a different space from everybody else because I would have the cool toys, and it was
Yeah.
not like the rich stuff. It was like simple things like a little Yamaha keyboard,
Yeah.
like $100 keyboard, And so yeah, that it was very life in Honduras for me was very peaceful, slow paced, secure. It was.
Yeah.
I felt right at home. Interesting, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What inspired your parents to move to the US?
I've asked my parents this question before, like now as an adult, because I've heard so many stories about it. And I think that when I was a kid, they would try to hide the real reasons why they moved. But according to my father, they moved here because they had a big bank payment that they had to do. The bank was going to take their home away if they didn't pay a certain amount.
Their home in Honduras.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They had a debt with the bank because my grandpa was also a farmer. So we went through a drought back in 1999 because of a hurricane,
Yeah.
Hurricane Mitch, that destroyed Central America. The worst hurricane in history of Honduras. So my grandpa lost it all because of the hurricane. So my dad was gonna lose his house as well, my grandparents. So my dad was like, I'm gonna have to go to the US to get this money so we can pay the bank back and we can still keep our homes.
Yeah.
So he moved here by himself for that reason back in 1999.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he have like a plan? Did he have a job lined up, or he's just like, we're gonna show up and we're gonna find something?
His plan was literally to come here to work for 2 years.
Okay.
And the work that he does in Honduras, he's a high school teacher, but
Hmm.
he wasn't able to do it here because he was not bilingual, and also like it works differently. You have to have accreditation from the U.S.
Oh,
to
yeah.
teach,
Yeah.
and so the only work he could do is labor, blue collar labor jobs. So he did construction work for a while, security guard, like he did a lot of random jobs, but the plan was always for him to go back to Honduras after 2 years.
Hmm.
But the thing, what happens when you come to the U.S. is that you realize how awesome things are here, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I could make, so much money here in a month. That would
Yeah.
take me 3 years to make in Honduras.
Yeah.
So that kept him here, and he was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say one more year, and now like 20 something years later, it's like not only he's still here, but his whole family is here now.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating to me, and I think that people don't think about this that often, that your dad was a skilled, educated teacher,
Mhm.
and then he was working a blue collar job in the United States.
Yeah.
Like he's not somebody who was working blue collar job in Honduras.
Yeah, and he was making double, if not more, here as a construction
Whoa.
worker than as a teacher. And
That's
by the way, this is
fascinating.
still true to this day. Like
Wow.
a housekeeper here makes more than a doctor in Honduras sometimes. Like,
Wow.
and I know it sounds exaggerating, but you can look it up. It's true. And I have friends that are professionals in Honduras that move here because of necessity, and then they do blue collar jobs, but they get way more money a year than they would get practicing, their professional careers in Honduras.
Man.
And I'm sure it's true for a lot of countries,
Yeah.
especially third world countries.
Okay, so your dad is in the United States. He stays longer than his planned 2 years. When does your mom come to the U.S.?
So my mom came 9 months after my dad
Okay.
left Honduras because the plan was for her to take care of us. But I think things were shaking their relationship, or I don't know exactly why. But eventually, 9 months later, my mom came to the U.S. to reunite with my dad,
Got it. Got it.
and then that's how the whole story began for us. It's because after they moved here, they were thinking about staying for a few more years and then come back, to
Yeah.
raise us in Honduras. But things just, years just go by like days,
Yeah.
and things just come out in a different way that you planned sometimes. And for them, it was that.
Did it feel weird that your parents had left you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up thinking that they had abandoned me,
Hmm.
and I remember it was really hard for me. I was the older, son because I have a sister. She's 22 now, but so I was the one I think that was affected the most. It was a very emotional, a traumatic experience for me because I remember my mom. I still remember to this day when my mom left. I don't remember when my dad left. But I'm closer to my mom, I guess. And I remember when she left, and she left me her Bible. I remember this like so clearly. And she told me, I'm gonna come back. Please don't forget me. And
Hmm.
first, it was like I was so sad. I was crying, and then I became indifferent. And then I became to the point where I was like, "You're not my mom anymore. My mom is my aunt, you know, and you left me for U.S. dollars." That's how I would think it as a
Yeah.
kid. I didn't understand as a kid what money was, or like paying bills or anything.
Yeah.
So now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, But obviously, a kid is not supposed to understand these
Yeah.
things. When you're 5, 6, all you know is that you want to be with your dad and with your mom. You don't know where food comes from, and so it was that for me. And so I had to heal from that as a kid. When they asked me to come to the US, I say no, by the way. And this is the story that many
Really?
people don't know is most people that are brought here, it's not that they want to be
Yeah.
brought here, but they have no other choice because they're minors. Minors, that's how
Yeah.
you say that.
Yeah.
And so you have to just do what your parents say. I never wanted to come here. My life in Honduras was, for me as a teenager, obviously, when I was 11 or 12, I was really good in Honduras. I had friends, church, I was playing the
Yeah.
music, and it was great. I
And
was
you didn't
riding my
know the
bike.
difference either.
No, not at all. I thought it was. See, the U.S. has always been this promised land idea, or this concept of a promised land for Latin Americans, especially for Honduras. I can speak for for a whole country, but for most people I know that are immigrating or migrating to the U.S., to them it's like, no, the U.S. is the promised land. We have to go through the desert, like in this case, literally,
Yeah.
and then to get here. But that was the idea. For me, it was like, it's a promised land, but I love where I am. I don't want to move there. I would rather my parents to come back to Honduras. But when you're 11, you don't know. Like, I mean, I think my parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the process to like getting to the United States from Honduras? Then what was it for your parents, and then what was it for you?
Okay, so my parents tried to get visa, but it was not given to them. And again, this response to many questions that people have or ask me, why didn't you do it the legal way? Because, I have to say we came illegally, like pretty much. When my dad went to ask for a visa, he explained to the embassy his situation. I have this debt. I have to make some money. If not, my house is going to be taken away. But they don't give you a visa unless, you have a lot of monny and you have
Oh.
like you have to own land. Like, this is something also that many people don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You have to be how do you say, land owner? Like, you
Yeah.
have to own land and you have to have possessions. You have to prove to the US embassy that you have a lot of things in Honduras in order for them to give you a visa. And I understand, I get it. They want to bring people that are educated, people that are not going to stay here, but they're going to go back to their country.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah,
so
so they-
because they're like, oh, you've got a vested interest in
Yeah.
coming back to Honduras.
Exactly.
And is it Honduras that denied them, or the United States that denied them?
No, this is the U.S. embassy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
The U.S. embassy in Honduras.
Got it.
So you go to the capital. Typically, you go to the capital of the country, and then you apply. You bring your papers, you bring your possessions, you bring your titles, whatever you have, and then they say, we're gonna give you the visa, or we won't give you the visa.
And so, despite the hurricane and then the drought, they weren't like bringing in more people or anything.
No, not at all. I mean, it's always, this is something again that people don't know. It's always been really hard for third world countries to get approved of a visa to come to the U.S. If you're from Spain, easy, quick. If you're from Chile, Argentina, easier, because you are from a first world country, which typically gives you a better chance,
Got it.
But countries in Central America, we have it really hard. It has always been that way, always. During the Bush administration, during the Obama administration, now it's even harder, but it's always been really difficult. During the Clinton administration, I've heard that there was amnesty happening, so it was easier
Yeah.
for people to come. But anyway, so many people go to the embassy to ask for a visa, and the problem here is that it's expensive, to apply for a visa. Really, really expensive.
And you're not guaranteed that you're going to get it.
Yeah. It's like playing the lottery. You put your money in, you go, but you show up, but you don't know if you're
Yeah.
gonna get it. Most people, I think 90% of people that apply don't get it, and the 10% are people who come here only as tourists and to vacation in the U.S. And so so after their visa getting denied, and my mom went through the same process. We went through the same process too, by the way. We all went to the U.S. embassy in Honduras, try to apply for visa. And my parents spent more than $5,000
Wow.
in 2006, to try to get us here legally, and then it didn't work that way. So for us, it was more, things were getting crazy in Honduras with crime and, gangs. And a lot of the kids that had parents in the U.S. were being threatened. Like, they were kidnapping kids that had parents in the U.S. because these people that were doing these things had this idea that because they're in the U.S., they can they
They
have
can actually
access.
pay the ransom.
They have
Yeah.
access to more money. So my parents were afraid that we were gonna get kidnapped because we were written in a list. It's funny how these things work.
Yeah.
Because like the gossip around town was so quick that you heard, oh, so and so is on the list to being kidnapped. And so
Whoa.
so the rumors started spreading. My parents were like, we have to get you guys out of there.
Yeah.
So
And it's interesting how the whole thing is cyclical. So you have a hurricane and then a drought that creates an economic issue. And your
Yeah.
parents are like, okay, well, we have to solve this economic issue and we're going to try to apply for a visa.
yeah,
That doesn't work. So then they're like, okay, well, we're going to lose our job and our property
Yeah.
if we don't do something. So, we're driven to do this thing. And then it's like, okay, now that we're in this situation, now our kid is in danger.
yeah, and I think it's a very similar story for everybody. Even the European migrants, they started coming in the 40s or during the or during First World War, and it was the same thing. They first came, to get some money and get back, but they saw how awesome things were here. They were like, what if we try to bring our family and have a better life here? Especially, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what it feels like to say, I want to give my kid a better future. And so even though I didn't like coming here at first, I always tell my parents when I see them now, it's like, thank you for bringing me here. Because I would probably be dead by now if I had not come to the U.S. So,
Yeah, what are the lives of your peers back in Honduras like?
so right now, especially as we talk, there's a lot of crisis. There's a big crisis going on in the country. The current president, you know, pretty much changed the constitution to be voted again into office. And so most people know that it was corrupted the way
Yeah.
he got elected, and it's affected the whole country because it created crisis between the two parties, the left and the right, and then a lot more crime. Honduras, I think, is amongst the most dangerous countries in the world, if not the
Wow.
second most dangerous country in Latin America. And so the life of my peers is just constant sorrows, trying to survive, trying to stay safe. They don't go out of the house after 9 p.m. My sister was recently in Honduras visiting, and she said that after a certain time, like 9 p.m., like nobody gets out of the house because you get shot or you get kidnapped or.
Wow.
So it's very bad right now, and I'm sure that there's great things about it, about Honduras, about my country, but the everyday life is really tough right now for most citizens, especially for the lower class or middle class citizens in the country. That's why you have the crisis going on in the caravan. Many people living in huge group. Like 7,000 people. Marching
Yeah.
through Guatemala and Mexico. Risking their life because there's no option for them.
Well, and it's not a caravan because they're trying to intimidate or scare anybody. It's a caravan because that's the safest way to move through.
Yeah.
Like move north.
Yeah, they find comfort in other people. You feel safer, because you don't only have to cross the border, the U.S. and Mexican border. Remember, as a Honduran citizen, you pass through Guatemala illegally as well, and also through Mexico illegally as well. And here's something that most people don't know, and when I tell them this, they get shocked. The Mexican government or the Mexican border patrol, the Mexican, police officers they're typically worse when it comes to human dignity than the U.S. border patrol. Meaning the U.S. government has a bit more compassion towards immigrants than the Mexican government. And I know if you're Mexican and you're hearing this, I know it gets you angry because it's not supposed to be that way. But there's more corruption in Latin America than there is in the U.S. There's corruption in every government, but I can say that there's more in Mexico because of the way they treat their immigrants. Right now, the Mexican government has killed 5 people already in the caravan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, intentionally. Like they have helicopters, flying low when people are swimming the rivers, so they can either go back or drown. And yesterday I heard a story of a young boy, like 18-year-old, that drowned in the river because of that. It makes me really angry because we don't treat our immigrants the way we should treat them either in our countries. And then we come to the U.S. asking for good treatment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is a chain that happens in every country.
I'm sure there's a lot of components to it, but I think there's a fear of the other. And I
Yeah.
think there's a fear of change.
Yeah.
change is scary. Like, that's very valid. Fear of the other is less valid.
Yeah,
But I think it's a universal experience.
it is. It's not the only. The U.S. is not the only country that has a bad reputation when it comes to how they treat their immigrants. In fact, sometimes we are more merciful here than in other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and our roots are a root of showing mercy to immigrants.
Yeah.
But I think we oftentimes forget that. And I think it's, again, it's hard to hold on to those
It
ideas.
is. And we are a nation of immigrants. This was a land that didn't belong to us in the beginning, and so ultimately, I think that's why the U.S. has been that promised land. The Statue of Liberty. Give me your poor, your tired,
Yeah.
because that's what it signified for many people in Europe. At the time, and that's why they came here. I saw a meme recently of a boat, like a big boat or like almost like a cruise.
Oh, yeah, like a cruise ship.
Yeah, with like tons of European immigrants. And the meme says something like, this was also a caravan. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
when Europeans saw a big group migrating to America, they were like, you know what, I could probably pull it off too and just join them. So you see back in the 30s, 20s, this like huge boats of like Italian immigrants or German immigrants coming to to New York City.
Yeah.
So these caravans have been happening for a long time. The big group of immigrants coming to a better life has been happening for a while.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it
Yeah,
that way.
it's just that we are now seeing it more than ever because of social media.
Yeah.
And
I mean, cable news
Yeah.
and fear mongering.
yeah,
Like, that was, it's wild. It was, I think it was last night on Fox News, which is super surprising. Shep Smith, I think is his name. He's an anchor.
yeah,
He's probably the most level-headed anchor on Fox News.
yeah,
And he essentially says, hey, guys, so there's this caravan coming that everybody's telling you about. They're 1,000 miles away still on foot. Like, it's going to take them 2 months to reach the U.S.-Mexico border.
yeah,
If they even make it to
Yeah.
the U.S.-Mexico border, when they get here, like, you are not in danger. Nobody is in
Yeah.
danger. Like, this isn't a safety emergency.
yeah. I mean,
And
it's
he actually
moms
was
and
able to say
kids.
that, which is wild. But yeah, it's a lot of moms and kids.
It's admirable that he said that. It's a lot of vulnerable people,
yeah,
and I get it. There's certain. I mean, if you have 7,000 people, one of them is gonna be somebody who doesn't have the best intentions.
yeah,
In any group,
yeah,
if you have 10 people in a room, not all of them will be good intentioned people.
yeah,
And so, unfortunately, the bad of the group ruins it for everybody else.
yeah. Well, I mean, we've reported on this in the Good newspaper. Immigrants to the United States, whether they arrive legally or illegally, are less likely to commit crimes
Yes.
than natural-born citizens.
Yes.
The reality is that probably for the most part, there's an equal variety of people who are going to commit crimes across all races, nationalities, etc. But there is something about being a natural-born citizen in the United States right now where if you feel afraid of change, that's going to create a greater sense of crime, perhaps.
Yeah.
And so that's the wild thing. That,
Yeah. And also, it's wild to know that most people don't know that when it comes to immigrants who are here undocumented, they're not all from Latin America. They're not all from Central America.
Yeah.
You have European immigrants here who are undocumented, but they don't look like it. So when immigrants get attacked, it's typically dark-skinned Latin American immigrants. But we have to remember that we have a huge population of European, Asian, and immigrants from all over the world who are affected.
Yeah.
Also.
And they're just showing up on an airplane
Yeah.
with a tourist visa.
Yeah.
And they're crossing the border
Yeah.
in just a different.
In a different way.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, that you don't, when you hear the word illegal immigrant, you think of Latin Americans, especially Mexicans or Central Americans. But there's a huge population of illegal immigrants who are from other parts of the world. And the reason why I mentioned that is because it's just to even break that stereotype of like,
Yeah.
not everyone who is illegal here. Also, not all Latin Americans are here illegally. There's a huge community of immigrants from Latin America, from Honduras, that come here legally,
Yeah.
and they are lucky or they have a better chance at, being here legally, and so they do it. Does that make sense? Like,
Totally.
it's a whole.
Yeah.
It's a whole even for me as an immigrant, when I hear illegal immigrant, I think of my people first. And I'm like, wait a second, it's not necessarily just.
It's so much more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
But I mean, our brains love to take shortcuts.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
love to oversimplify things because it helps us burn less calories.
That's
Is ultimately what it's doing. And
so
so
good.
if our brain can make that shortcut, like it will. And so that's why you have to actively choose to not, lean into those stereotypes.
That's
Because
true.
we all have these internal biases that go unchecked every single day. And so you have to kind of remind yourself, like you said, even you think of, people who look like you or your own people as undocumented immigrants. Like we all have these biases. And so we have to acknowledge them in order to turn them around.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take a quick break from this conversation to tell you about the sponsor of this week's episode of Sounds Good, Hover. Hover makes it easy to buy a domain name for your big idea. And Hover also believes the internet has the power to bring change in the world. And if you put those two things together, you have something powerful. If you have a blog, you know all about using the internet to spread positivity and bring about change. As an influencer in your passion, your words matter. You deserve to represent yourself well, and your domain name is a big part of that. Having a personal domain name feels more reliable and more professional than having a domain name at .blogspot.com, .squarespace.com, or .whatever.com. In fact, people are way more likely to take what you're doing seriously if you own your own domain name. And Hover makes that so easy. Oh my goodness, it's so easy. And get this, you can get a .com domain name from Hover for only $14.99 per year. That's not per month, that's per year. Hover also makes it super easy to get connected to your website builder too. So wherever you're building your website, the Hover Connect feature allows you to connect your domain name with a few simple clicks. That's what I did when I bought BrandenHarvey.com over 8 years ago, and that's what I did when I launched goodgoodgood.co. For listeners of Sounds Good, Hover is offering 10% off your first purchase when you visit hover.com/soundsgood. So just go to hover.com/soundsgood today to save 10% on your domain name and help support this podcast. Hover, making it easy to bring your passions and ideas to life for the sake of changing the world. Okay, now back to the rest of the conversation. Okay, so you were 12 and your parents said, hey, you got to come up to the U.S.
Yeah.
What's the process of getting to the U.S. like for you?
So whatever I'm about to say might make my parents look bad or sound like bad, but remember, they were trying to rescue me from death,
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. So I had to come undocumented to the U.S. So what happens is most people hire coyotes. That's what they're called.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
Coyotes. How do you say it in English?
I would say like coyote.
Coyote. Yeah.
As like
So-
an English speaking.
Yeah. So, but that's, the term comes from the animal.
Yeah.
I guess because it moves through the desert. That's how it began
Got it.
a long time ago. So they hire human traffickers, pretty much, to get you through Guatemala illegally, and then through Mexico illegally, and then the biggest challenge of it all, which is crossing the border.
And how much of
And-
this is walking versus in a vehicle versus...
This is honestly different for every
Yeah.
case. For me, I took every type of transportation.
Got it.
Train, semi-trucks. At one point in Mexico, I was hidden under the seat of the back of a semi-truck. I could
Wow.
barely breathe. I remember I thought I was going to die of suffocation because I couldn't breathe. But they had to hire me in a semi-truck that had some type of cargo, which I think, and I'm almost sure that it was immigrants in the back of the semi-truck as well. But for me, because I was a kid, I guess my parents paid more to have a bit of better treatment, which you can.
Got
You
it.
pretty much have a package that you can pay these people. So it's a group of people that work illegally throughout Guatemala, Mexico, and in the border, and even in the U.S. So they all communicate with each other, and they bring these people. They pretty much traffic humans. They bring this group of humans illegally by paying to the officials in each country, in Mexico and in Guatemala.
Oh,
So
so
I
they're
remember-
like they're bribing.
Yes, that's the word, I guess. But I remember, being in a bus and having to put my arm in the seat in front of me because I honestly like a bracelet
Okay.
that was kind of like my pass. So when
Oh.
there was a checkpoint in Guatemala, the police officers would get in the bus, and I wasn't told to put my arm in front of the chair so they could see my bracelet, which pretty much meant that they pay for my entrance under the table. So there's a lot of
Fascinating.
corruption within itself. The
Wow.
government, the local government in Guatemala and in Mexico works with these people in order to bring these people because they know that their main goal is to get to the U.S. So they are like, we have this group of people going through my country, so I'm gonna make some money out of it.
Yeah, they kind of know. Okay,
Yeah,
this isn't the final stop
yeah,
for
just
most
like
of these
drugs
people.
that come from South America. It's the same thing. They charge an
Oh.
amount of money in order for those drugs to come illegally into the country and reach the main destination, which is the promised land, the land of opportunity. And so they would do anything they can. And obviously this is under the table. And they
Yeah.
would never admit it, but it's again not to sound, negative, but it's just a lot of corruption that
Yeah.
happens. And so that's how I came here. I remember sleeping in a hammock in the border of Guatemala and Mexico the night before I crossed the river. There's also like a small river that you had to cross in the border of Guatemala and Mexico. I remember sleeping in a hammock, being bit by mosquitoes like crazy.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, it was dangerous. I heard gunshots all the time. I honestly experienced, I witnessed a little girl get raped by one of
Mm.
these coyote guys, and I heard it. And the group cannot do nothing about it because you get shot, because you're vulnerable. You're being led by these criminals. And I know this is triggering to talk about, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I just lightly say it, but I remember as a 12-year-old hearing a little girl get raped, and we couldn't do nothing about it because the guys with the gun were, the people who were bringing us here. So it's a long story, but to make a long story short, the whole journey was traumatic, terrifying, and that's not even the worst part because the worst part was crossing the border, the U.S. and Mexican border, which is the most traumatic part, and I still don't talk about it much because it triggers me and it's very clear in my head. Yeah.
Really? What about it is traumatic to you still?
I mean, I remember hearing the coyotes, or the guys talk about how they were gonna cross us through the river, and they spoke about us like we were merchandise, you know. And some of them would die because they couldn't keep up with the group, so they left them in the desert. And you're seeing all of this happen. So there's so many layers to it. And then once you crossing the border, I felt like the biggest criminal in history. And I would question, why do I have to cross this border like a criminal? And we had to swim the Rio Grande. That's what the river is called between Mexico
It's a
and
big river.
yeah.
What was
And
the part that you crossed big?
I crossed through Texas, and it
Okay.
was huge, and it was
Wow.
dangerous, and I had to swim, and I was afraid, and they let you cross the river, but they let go of you. Once you cross the river, the guys, they don't have control anymore. So as a kid, your goal is to swim to the other side. But as you're swimming, as you're crossing the river, there's helicopters going around. You hear dogs barking from the border patrol, the U.S. border patrol, and then there's spotlights going on. It's terrifying because you're literally breaking a national or a federal law. Obviously, I didn't know at the time,
Yeah.
but you're like literally like a federal criminal in a way. You don't know that because all you know is you going to your parents.
Yeah.
You risking your life to not die in your country, and that's why it's traumatic for me because I've been through it the worst way. That immigrants can come, and to this day, I remember the sound of the helicopters and the dogs. And when I reached the other side, I blacked out. I don't remember what happened. I just remember waking up in the desert, almost dead, and being picked by a border patrol agent, which was really nice to me and gave me water and brought me to a prison cell. Like the ones you've been seeing lately on the news, with aluminum foil blankets. That existed back in 2006. That's not a reason. That's not a thing that's just happened. The problem here is that Americans are just being exposed to it.
Yeah.
So many people are like, "What the heck is going on in the border?"
Yeah.
Like, no, this has been going on for a while
Yeah.
since the Bush administration, or even before that. But it just happens to be public now because of social media. So some people tell me that oh, it's fake. Those photos are manipulated. And I'm like, I actually was in those prison cells. They're cages, like literally.
Yeah.
And so I was taken by a border patrol to that prison cell until they were able to contact my parents and pretty much send me to my parents.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so why did they send you to your parents instead of saying, hey, you got to go home?
So there's a lot of policy that goes with the whole story at the time. Remember, policy changes constantly when it
Yeah.
comes to the border. At the time, the Bush administration was allowing kids under the age of 15, I think, to appeal their case if they reach the border. So if you reach the border as a kid from Honduras specifically, they were not allowing the Mexican kids the same way they were allowing Hondurans. So they were showing more mercy to us. So they would allow us to go to the court and to the judge and appeal our case.
Wow.
So they gave us 6 months, a 6 month period of, tell me why you need to be here.
Yeah.
And then my parents, obviously, they didn't go to court because they knew they were going to send us back, which
Got
is
it.
typically the case.
Got it.
So it's very.
That's a weird part of the system.
It's a lot of layers, man.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was the law at the time, or that
Yeah.
was the policy. Now it's changed. So it's a lot of layers, and it's really hard to understand. And I understand when people don't get it, but at the same time, I always tell people like you should study a bit more because there's more layers to it. It's not that people just stay here because illegally because they want to. It's mostly because they've tried every choice. And to this day, like 2018, 26-year-old me, I'm still undocumented. And to say this, it's very scary, but it's just part of the story. Like I haven't solved the problem.
Yeah. Are you at all in danger being on this podcast and talking about that and the process and the fact that you're undocumented?
I mean, have you seen those documentaries of people who leave cults and they talk about it? Have you seen those interviews? I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it kind of feels like that because I'm exposing a lot of weird, dark, under the table stuff that happens. So I am in danger in a way. But I mean, I am not risking much right now. I don't have a daughter. I don't have a kid.
Mm.
I'm 26 and I'm also advocating for dreamers. I'm a dreamer now.
And for those who may be a little bit unfamiliar with the Dream Act,
Yeah.
maybe a quick breakdown of what
Dream
that
Act
is.
has been we've been wanting Congress to pass for a long time. It's a policy that would give citizenship to kids who were brought here not by their own intent. So we've been fighting for the Dream Act since a long time, years. Maybe 2003 was when the Dream Act became like the name.
Because there were a lot of people who were under 18 brought by their parents to the U.S. and it's like you didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
like, you could have had some degree of a choice, but at the end of the day, it's your parents telling you got to come to the States.
And also, they grew up as American citizens here. They speak English.
Yeah.
They went to high school, middle school here, and most of them don't have an accent. I have an accent because who knows why I never lost it. But
it's a wonderful accent.
Thank you very much. So that's the Dream Act. And so in 2012, we were really close for Congress to approve the Dream Act, but they didn't approve it by 2 votes, unfortunately. And so Obama at the time was like, "Wow, I can't believe you guys didn't approve it." And I'm obviously misquoting, but so I'm gonna give you I'm gonna do an executive order.
Yeah.
So that's what DACA is. DACA is a cheap version of the Dream Act.
Got it.
DACA is like pretty much like I won't give you path to citizenship, I won't deport you, but I'm not gonna give you residency. So I'm gonna keep you in a loophole that's weird.
Yeah.
And like in a weird black hole stage.
And because it's an executive order, the next president can
revoke it.
Revoke it. And has President Trump done that?
He did.
Okay.
A few months ago, but thankfully ACL.
ACLU.
Yeah, they took it to court and
American Civil Liberties.
And so
Union.
because of that, some judges have blocked it. So right now it's in a weird stage.
Got it.
It's not necessarily taken away completely, but there's not. You cannot
it's tied
apply.
up in the courts. Yeah.
Yeah,
oh
you
yeah, and
cannot
nobody
apply.
new can do it.
No, nobody new can do it.
But you're
I
still
have
a
it.
dreamer.
I have it. So my expires in April 2019.
Wow.
And as of right now, I could reapply. But obviously, I don't think it's going to stay like this. It's going to somehow change and hopefully it stays like this, or hopefully it changes for the better. But if, let's say, if I cannot reapply, then I'm basically back to the drawing board and back to completely, I'm still undocumented. Because DACA doesn't give you, remember, DACA is not a permanent or a status at all.
It's not even a step towards citizenship.
No.
It's
DACA
just
is
saying
just like
we're
you're
not
in a
gonna-
room
yeah.
waiting for it to be either deported or to be towards a path to citizenship.
Got it. And there's no plan for either yet.
Not yet.
And so Trump is basically saying, okay, we're going to create a path towards you getting deported. And
Yeah.
then a potential future president could be saying, no, let's create a path towards
To
citizenship.
citizenship.
And the polling says that a majority of Americans, a decent percentage of Americans, are supportive of a
Yeah.
path to citizenship.
Yeah, even a lot of Republican congressmen are, in support. Even it was really surprising when Marco Rubio came out
Yeah.
saying that he will support path to citizenship.
Yeah.
When he was running for, to be a candidate for presidency, he was against it.
Yeah.
Then he changed his mind.
It's not an easy thing
Yeah.
for somebody like him with his district to do.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in both sides wanting citizenship for us, but it's a complex thing and there's politics involved.
Yeah.
And Trump is saying, the president is saying, give me the border, the wall, give me the wall, and I'll give you path to citizenship. So we are like pretty much like an exchange coin. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna give you citizenship if Democrats in Congress or in the Senate approve the wall, and they will not approve the wall.
Yeah.
And they
I mean,
because they're gonna be against everything Trump wants when it
Yeah.
comes to the wall.
yeah.
So we are pretty much in the middle of this war between pride and political game. I don't know.
What do you think? So let's pretend that Trump wasn't a thing, that the current Senate and current Congress weren't a thing, and all the politics kind of were gone from this, and we had the ability to rewrite our immigration laws. What do you think would be the healthy and fair thing to create? And I know that's a big question.
No, I can answer that question by simply saying, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at how the country is being run and what the people are doing to better the country or to make it run.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you this is surprising to many people, and I still don't know why. The people who cook your food at Mexican restaurants, probably illegal. The people who cut your yard, probably undocumented. People who pick up tomatoes in California or wherever, everywhere in the States, they're probably undocumented. So society, as we know it in the U.S., it works because of also undocumented immigrants. So all I'm saying, and the reason why I say that is, I think we should rethink about how we deal with these people, with us, because we are already here anyways, and I don't think they're gonna go away.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds very like I'm not saying this in an offensive way to people who don't agree with amnesty for immigrants, but what I'm saying is we are here anyways, so why not do it the right way? It's gonna benefit the country economically. It's gonna make life safe for Americans. Like, for example, Dreamers, we had to go through an extensive background check by the FBI in order to get the Dream Act status, or the DACA status. So I went through a deep, profound, where I had to send screenshots on my Facebook timeline
Oh, wow.
to FBI for them to say you actually are somebody that could be here. So it'll make life safe for everybody else. That's why I wish people would understand this.
Yeah.
Amnesty would mean people who are living under the shadows would have to come and do background checks. So if they're doing some type of crime, they will be checked for it and they will be sent back, which is good for the safety of Americans and for the safety of the immigrants who are here doing good work. Does that make sense?
Totally. And what about the border in the future? I think that the wall is a terrible idea just because you build a 10-foot wall, you get a 12-foot ladder. It's just a really bad expense. But I also, to some degree, am like, oh, well, I think that, understanding who is coming into the U.S. and who isn't is valuable. And so, based off of my, very limited understanding of all of this, my thought process is increase the number of people who can immigrate legally and include people from developing countries instead of just developed countries, or more so, but tighten up security on, not only the southern border, but also coming into the U.S. border security on a plane stuff. I don't know. What do you think about that? Because at the same time, you've got people coming from, Latin America who need refuge somewhere.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And this is really important. Like, this part of the conversation and this question is, I think, the most important part of understanding policy when it comes to immigration. And I'm not a professional, right? I'm speaking as an immigrant, but there's great resources online for you to understand policy and how it works. But what I can answer you about this is, the numbers are going down when it comes to people who are migrating here illegally. So
Not only that, but there's fewer people every year who
yeah,
are in the
yeah,
United States illegally because
yeah,
people are leaving
yeah,
more than people are coming.
yeah. So a lot of politicians speak about immigrants coming here like if it was a crisis going on for us in the U.S., but it's not. It's not. So numbers are going down. There's not a lot of people immigrating here illegally like they used to be in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Bush's era, I think, had the highest. It was either
yeah,
Bush or Clinton.
yeah, yeah. And so now it's like going down because of what people hear in the news. They're more skeptical about it. So, and also what I'm saying is my ideal thing or scenario in my head would be that Honduras will build their government in a way that people don't have to immigrate. And that's the
Yeah.
thing, Brandon, that a lot of people don't understand either. And I don't say this to blame it on people. It's just I didn't understand it either until I did my own research. But I don't, as an immigrant, dude, I wish I could have stayed in Honduras and had a great life over there. Think about
Yeah.
it. So my goal, my desire is for these countries to rebuild their governments in such a way that they don't have to immigrate. Because let me tell you this, brother, Honduras is a beautiful country. Do we have amazing landscapes? We have incredible environmental places, mountains, rivers. There's gold in a lot of mountains in Honduras. Like there's so much natural resources. I mean, we have an island called Roatan, which a lot of North Americans go there for vacation. It's like bilingual completely, and there's like a lot of tourism happening. Honduras has so much potential to become an amazing self-sustained country. So my ultimate goal is not for immigrants to be welcome in this country, which is obviously what I would like. But my ultimate dream is for like these countries to build their countries in a way that's so good that you don't have to immigrate.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you this, even if you immigrate legally, it's a cultural shock. It's a lot of work. You have to work harder. It's a
And
lot
you're
of
working
money.
through the trauma of it
Yeah,
too.
trauma, a lot of money you have to spend. You have to, you have to adapt to a different country. So like, it's not necessarily that I'm saying that I want everybody to immigrate to the U.S. Even though I think that people who immigrate to the U.S. are bringing good things to the country,
Mhm.
to the economy. But does that make sense?
Totally.
My dream is for us to stay in
Yeah.
our country. So most people would think like, no, those immigrants want like us to have open border policy. No, 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 no. I would love for our governments in Latin America to be self-sustained, to be
Yeah.
self-sufficient for their own people, because that would make the world a better
Totally.
place, and also it would create better opportunities, and people don't have to die in the border.
Yeah.
People don't have to, go to emotional trauma and etc. So that's my ultimate goal.
Man, I love that.
I wish that we could, in a perfect world, that would be the ultimate goal.
Well, and the ultimate goal would be for Honduras to be able to do that completely on its own. But
Yeah.
if you're an expert on immigration,
Yeah.
like a 7 out of 10 expert, and I'm a 7 out of 10 expert on foreign assistance.
Yeah.
And the way that the United States gives money and creates programs and
Yeah.
offers aid to developing countries around the world
Right.
to help them get a hand up.
Yeah.
And I feel like an increase in budget to foreign assistance and having a focus on Latin America
Yeah.
could really have a lot of impact. You do that and you have less need to pay ICE. You
Yeah.
do that and you have less need. You've got a different employment situation in the United States.
Right.
And what would it look like if we invested in, supporting, Honduras and El Salvador and Mexico
Yeah.
financially through certain programs so that these countries can thrive and people don't need to leave. And then,
Yeah.
this is outside of the need from just like a human rights standpoint and supporting people who are in need.
Yeah.
There's also huge economic benefits of now we have
Yeah.
new trade partners
Yeah.
who, it's a lot easier to trade things on the same continent than it is to trade to China, things like
Yeah,
that. It becomes
exactly.
cheaper. You've got all these other positive benefits.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the problem is that I think a lot of people see this as a topic instead of as humans.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
become dehumanized. And if
Yeah.
we could just get back to that and say, okay, how can we help people?
Yeah.
Right now we're just rejecting the ability to help
Yeah.
people in many ways. But what if we said, okay, let's help people with the immediate ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
like in a reactive way, but let's also help people in a proactive way.
Yeah.
Let's find out, who the Gustavo will be in 10 years.
Yeah.
And before he even comes to the United States, let's help him in the United States, but let's before he even comes to the United States, let's figure out how to help him in Honduras as well.
Yeah, and the U.S. has done so much goodness to these countries, to third world countries. We've done a lot of greatness, especially local organizations like churches, people who go on missions, they build schools. I mean, I could sit here and talk forever about the good work of the North American in Central America. But what I would also say here is also I wish that the U.S. would stay sometimes outside of. I wish they would not inflict into things that they're not supposed to. And this is a whole different deep conversation that I'm not going to go into. But what I can tell you is, in a surface level, is the U.S. has also inflicted in things that they should have never inflicted in, and that creates chaos in the country.
It's a good reminder.
Because remember that there's a lot of resources, natural resources in Latin America. There's a lot of locations that are strategically great for the U.S. to have, like Cuba. The U.S. has wanted to own Cuba for the longest time in human history because it's great location. Because remember, if Cuba gives Russia permission to use their location to attack us, Cuba is like literally 90 miles from Miami.
Yeah.
So strategically, the U.S. needs Cuba, just like Canada was also like something that the U.S. wanted to obtain because of strategically when it comes to locations. Does that make sense? I don't want to. So the U.S. sees Central America like that too.
Yeah, and it can kind of abuse that thing where it's like, oh, hey, I'm doing something good for you, but I'm actually
I'm taking something.
I've got
from
ulterior
you.
motives. Yeah,
and that's
a
again,
good reminder.
There's better good that the U.S. has done than bad. Even then, I'm skeptical, but I'm saying this from a perspective. I'm saying this as somebody who loves the U.S. Somebody who appreciates this country. But we have been, just like any human being has done in your life, you've done things that have hurt other people. We have done and created policy that has hurt Latin America in the past. And professionals can tell you even with a more deep perspective. But what I'm saying is, I wish that sometimes we don't go in places we should go when it comes to foreign policy in Latin America. And I think that would hopefully that would make things better. But again, I'm just not a professional when it comes to these things to talk about it. But I do know that the U.S. has some type of guilt because of certain situations that have happened, just like in the Middle East, also in Latin America, especially in Honduras. When Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, this is in her book, by the way. This isn't in herself. This is in her book. She admits that the U.S. government had to do with. In 2009, there was the president at the time in Honduras was taken away from office by force. And I don't know how the right words to say it, but the U.S. had to do with that. The U.S. government had to do with that obstruction, or the president that was voted in was taken away, in an illegal way, and the U.S. had to do with it. So that created conflict. So in a way, you can say, well, you guys have given us a lot of conflict, so now at least take a small percentage of immigrants. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's super complex.
Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I just want to see more public debate about all of this. Like, I can't believe that the debate is, do we build a wall or don't we build a wall? Because a wall is just, it's like a physical thing that like we can wrap our minds around, but it's symbolic of this greater conversation we should be having, which is like, what percentage of foreign assistance should be going to Honduras? And when we do that, is it purely food related, or is it aid, or is it military? And then what do we provide? What kind of amnesty do we provide to people in need? And what's refugee status? Like, what if we dive into the actual complex policy aspects of this instead of just focusing on, I'm scared of the brown people coming across the border?
Yeah. I agree with you, and I think that ultimately there's two ways of viewing this in a bigger perspective. Are we being threatened by other countries, so we're going to expand our military, or are we going to, protect ourselves, but be a bit less extreme when it comes to spending money into the military, unnecessary money sometimes. But I think it also, when you are, the greatest country on earth, I don't know if that's true or not, but when you're the most powerful country on earth, you're going to go to the extreme on protecting it. And sometimes that affects people. I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah. That affects countries and masses of humans,
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's part of, being one of the greatest country on earth is us also unfortunately creating policy that affects people negatively. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and everything is going to. Every
Yeah.
policy will. And so
Yeah.
the question is, can we do it with a sense of empathy and
Yeah.
thoughtfulness and a choice to, minimize
Yeah.
the suffering of others? I mean, ultimately what it is it's a question of, can we choose to put others before ourselves sometimes?
Yeah.
Like,
Or can we share? Can we be
can we
more
share?
compassionate?
Yeah.
Because remember, we have to remember, I think, or I'm saying this to myself too, we have more than we need. And that's the hardest part about,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part about being in North America in the United States, is that we sometimes neglect that we have a lot more than we need. And can we be a bit more compassionate? I think that's
Yeah.
the question. It's like, can you give more? And I'm talking about even in a local perspective. Like
Yeah.
right now in my life, Gustavo, what do you have that you can give to people that don't
Mhm.
have? Like, are you doing something for your community? Like this can be taken to a local stance. Like, we have more than we need. How can we be more compassionate to
Yeah.
people? And
And
so,
and maybe this is a good segue to, tell me a little bit about, so you moved to the United States, you went through school, all through school. You didn't speak English when you got here, you told me
yeah,
earlier.
I didn't, not a word. I was put into middle school, 8th grade, without knowing a word.
Wow.
It was the most. I hated my parents for this. I blamed it on them at the time. It was like, why do you do this to me? It was traumatic. I didn't want to learn English. Maybe that's why I still have a thick accent. I refused to learn it. I was like, I don't want to learn it. I want to
Yeah.
be sent back to Honduras.
Yeah.
I thought my parents eventually were gonna give up on it, and then we're gonna be like, you know what? We're gonna send you back with your aunt. But they didn't, and so I had no other choice than to learn English. And also, there was cute girls that I wanted to talk to.
That's so funny. You were in South Carolina.
Yeah,
So
I was in a
funny.
little town called Conway, South Carolina, which is still feels like home in a way. It's like 30 miles from Myrtle Beach. So I learned English because I needed to, and
to talk to cute girls.
yeah, pretty much. And then it became that's how I graduated. Thankfully, I got to learn, and now I love it.
Yeah.
English is one of my favorite languages, and it's so cool that I can speak 2 languages.
Yeah.
I love it so
And
much.
sing in 2 languages too.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh.
a game when you
I was
talk.
like going through all your YouTube videos, and I was like, oh, I love that I just heard you sing this in
thank
2
you.
languages.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like living in 2 worlds. I always
Yeah.
tell people, if you're bilingual, you know this. It's like you see the world in 2 different ways. Like it's just completely
That's
different.
amazing.
A phrase can mean completely different in Spanish than it does in English. And
Ah.
so I went through the whole process. It was really hard, but now I can look back at it and I'm like, man, I'm so thankful that I'm part of this subculture of bilingual speaking people.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a whole different level of culture.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
and it's becoming even bigger because of YouTube and
Yeah.
Facebook. Even what do they call these people that do videos in LA?
Oh, like bloggers?
Yeah, like even bloggers, they have incorporated bilingual
Wow.
conversations. It's really cool.
That's
I love it.
amazing.
Yeah,
And then, okay, so you went to college.
yeah.
And what's the process of going to college if you're a dreamer and you're not a
Oh,
U.S.
man.
citizen?
That was really tough. I couldn't go to a regular school because you have to have a social security number, obviously.
Got it.
And you know how hard it is for Americans to go to college.
Yeah.
So take that to like the extreme. Like it's even more, almost impossible for us. And my case was just a plate of events that happened and made it possible for me. I was admitted into this little small Bible college that was accredited at the time. And that's like they admitted me in a way. I don't know how they did it to this day.
Wow.
It was like the grace of the universe, the grace of God. And, but it was all being in the right time at the right moment, fighting for it as well.
Yeah.
Also, I was able to get a scholarship by leading worship on campus.
So your music is continuing to come
The
back.
music
and
has
pay
given
dividends.
me
Wow.
so much. I'm so thankful for music and my grandpa, and
Yeah.
because it's opening doors to me like I never imagined.
Wow.
To this day, I'm probably here in Nashville because of a YouTube video or of a cover song that I did, and it's opened doors for me to be in places and spaces that I never would have thought of. So music
Man.
has always paved a way for me to be able to have this life.
Yeah. And that's so unique because, your dad was a teacher and he had to basically do blue collar work. And I
Yeah.
love that you were a musician and you get
Yeah.
to continue to be a musician.
Yeah.
Like, what a beautiful thing.
I'm so privileged, it's because most people don't understand in my culture, what it is to be a full-time musician because
Yeah.
you're trying to feed your family. So
Yeah.
they're like, what is it that you do?
And it's not only that you're able to feed yourself with music, but
Yeah,
you've got this next level and it's kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing,
yeah,
where it's not just that you're feeding yourself with your music, but you are using your music to communicate stories that matter.
yeah,
And we were talking about
yeah,
that before, but tell me about like kind of the almost mission you have with the work that you do, or
yeah.
the music that you create.
I think music can connect me with people that would not really be interested in my story if I said it with simple words. And so they listen to a song and then they want to know more about why I'm singing that song or what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that opens room for me to say, actually, this is my story, and this could be the story of a lot of immigrants and the story of a lot of people who grew up here with without feeling they grew up here with this feeling that they didn't fit in. So my mission, if I was to put a mission into my music, I feel like, and I told you earlier, my
Yeah.
music is a way to start a conversation, to let people know that there's hope, that there's a better world that we can create, and that you have something to say and you should say it regardless of your background. And if I'm doing something with my life, regardless of all these things I've been through, you also, in a different way, I'm sure you have a big and powerful story, and you can use that and not be ashamed of it. Because the biggest thing for me, when I came out as an illegal immigrant, we also use that phrase, by the way, like you come out,
Really?
because a lot of people don't say it.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably have a friend that is undocumented and he hasn't told you yet. He
Wow.
or she hasn't told you yet. So, it takes a lot of guts to say, like, I'm gonna come out of the shadows and say this,
Yeah.
and it can be shameful. I mean, it
Totally.
sucks to say it. I'm an undocumented immigrant because it puts me into this like
There's a lot of
weird.
stigma in the United States. Right now.
Yeah,
But the other thing is, there's a lot of stigma because we don't know somebody.
yeah, yeah,
And kind of to bring it back to this, metaphor of the LGBTQ community,
yeah,
for the longest time, especially marriage legalization,
yeah,
a lot of people were in the closet. And obviously, there's still a lot of
yeah,
people who, for one reason or another, don't
yeah,
feel comfortable coming out. But
yeah,
I think that I read some study that says that now almost every single American knows somebody personally who
yeah.
identifies as LGBTQ.
That's amazing.
And
Yeah,
just a few decades ago, that wasn't true. It was a
Mhm.
very small percentage of people.
yeah,
And so now, the more people that we have who actually know an undocumented immigrant,
yeah,
and actually know somebody who is from Latin America,
yeah,
like all of a sudden, when you see a caravan of people on the news,
yeah,
you can actually be like, oh, well, that's Gustavo
yeah, yeah,
and his sister and
yeah.
his mom. Like you can put a face to these people and
Exactly.
realize it's
Yeah,
highly unlikely that person is as scary as some people would lead me to
exactly.
believe.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for saying that and for putting it into words like that. That's beautifully said. And yeah, I agree with you. Music, that again, that's for me. It's a way to tell these people too. It You're okay and you have value as a human being. And a paper, a social security number, doesn't give you value.
Yeah.
You already have that value because a lot
Yeah.
of people feel like unless they have a social security number, they mean something in society.
Mm.
But you matter regardless if you have a social security number or not. And it's okay to say I'm undocumented.
It's brave of you to say
But
that.
again, like
Yeah.
I know that some people
You got to
risk
choose your
more.
context.
Yeah, I know some people risk more. Like if I have a daughter here in the U.S. to feed, I probably would never say that I'm undocumented because I don't want to get deported. If I get deported back to Honduras, I'll probably move to Europe or something, and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right now, I have nothing to lose in a way
Yeah.
because I'm a single 26-year-old who doesn't have much responsibility other than pursuing my dreams. So I'm in a different way. I'm blessed or lucky to have this perspective, but I'm sure that I know people that have their business that they can't risk, so
Yeah.
they can speak about it. So yeah, I use music as an excuse to tell people like, you know what, it's okay to feel like an intruder sometimes, even though you're not. Just because you're
Yeah.
an illegal immigrant doesn't mean you're an intruder. It just means that you find yourself in a circumstance that made you take this type of lifestyle that is unfortunate, and I hope that we can solve it hopefully soon. And I hope eventually the world gets to a point where we don't have to immigrate so much, even though it's been the story of humans ever since the
Yeah.
beginning of time. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we're always, at the end of the day, we always are going to have that immigrant label, all of
Mhm.
us, because your parents came here or your grandparents probably came here in a way that, was not seen as legal, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. And you've got a new EP coming out soon.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's
Man,
so
I'm really
exciting.
excited. Yeah, it's gonna be in Spanish completely, but it's an EP.
And let me
Um,
just say, I love listening to your music in Spanish because
Thank
and
you.
I'm having a different experience than other people, but like because I
Yeah.
don't speak Spanish, I'm like I can work to this. I
Thank
don't
you
know
so
what these
much.
words mean. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful music.
Yeah, thank you.
But I mean, I know from people who speak Spanish who have listened to your music, like
Yeah.
you're a great lyricist.
Thank you
There's
very
a lot of
much.
thought, and I mean your English, stuff that you've created too is
Thank
beautiful
you.
as well.
I appreciate it. I'm just a lover of Spanish language, and I read mostly in Spanish, and so everything I bring into my heart is typically in Spanish. So I think I can say it better at the moment. So I'm really excited because it's an EP about pretty much what we've been talking about.
Mm.
One of my songs questions that, like it questions what fitting in looks like. And my first single that's gonna come out this Friday, or I don't know when this is gonna be
Yeah,
out,
so
but
it'll probably be
November the
last
2nd.
Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
November the 2nd, my first single. It's called Promised Land.
Mm.
So it literally speaks about pretty much stories of me as a misfit, if you want to call it that way, trying to figure out life. The second song in the EP is called Shell, like
Hmm.
like what the turtles have. Is
Yeah.
that what it's called?
Yeah, shell.
It's called caparazón in Spanish, and it's this idea of like not being able to fit in the shell. It's an analogy that works better in Spanish.
Really?
But yeah, pretty much the whole EP has this kind of concept of misfit trying to figure out the world in
Wow.
front of me, which I'm sure is the story of a lot of people. I'm really excited about it. I'm working with
Man,
these younger producers that are really dope and really cool.
dude, that's so good.
Yeah, yeah, it's a mix of Latin American traditional music with North American modern music. So it's like
Huh.
this song, this first single has this trap type of beat with Peruvian flute. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a really
Yeah.
interesting mix. I'm really excited about it. I hope people like it.
Good. Man,
Yeah,
I'm so pumped to hear it.
yeah. Thank you.
To kind of maybe, wrap up our conversation, we've talked about a lot. We've dove into your
Yeah,
story. We've dove into
foreign
policy,
policy.
how to use music to make an impact.
Yeah,
And a lot of this, we were talking about your story, which is based on, focusing on the past, but everything else has been focused on, what does the future look like? And, with the work that you're doing with this new EP coming out, I guess I'm just curious, what do you feel hopeful about right now? Looking forward, I think it'd be really easy and understandable to feel cynical
yeah.
about what's happening in the world right now. Again, that's incredibly valid, but from your perspective, what are you seeing going on in the world that you feel hopeful about?
Yeah, I feel hopeful, especially about these conversations that are happening all over the U.S. A lot of people are talking about things that 3 years ago we would have never talked about, and so I think that conversations bring friendships, and it brings
Mm,
relationships, and it brings hope into other people. Like the moment you start a conversation with your neighbor, like I'm talking about like a physical neighbor. Let's say you live in a house and you start a conversation with your neighbor, that house doesn't longer hold that weird mystery that it has whenever you don't know your neighbor. So I
yeah.
feel like if I use that analogy into people, I feel like if you start hearing these conversations, you start seeing more familiar things. And honestly, Brendan, I feel like I know that we have more things that make us alike, that things that make us different to each other. We are very similar. We have similar challenges, similar fears, and that's why I'm hopeful about the future, because these conversations are gonna bring us together as humanity, especially as United States citizens. Because we have such diversity country, we're gonna be able to connect even better, and also it's gonna expand our food. It's gonna expand our vocabulary. It's gonna expand our taste. I mean, I was telling you how Billboard Top 100 has
Yeah.
songs in Spanish, completely in Spanish.
Yeah.
I would have 10 years ago, I would have never believed you if you would have told me that there was going to be
Really?
a song completely in Spanish in the Billboard Top 10. That's unbelievable. I'm so excited about that because it opens people who are typically close to other cultures. It's going to open a bit more their perspectives, and it's going to bring them more color into their life. And I think together we could we can paint a better world, a more colorful world, if we bring our colors, to the canvas. And does that make sense? I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it. 'Cause
Yeah.
think about it. Like in LA, for example, when I lived in Los Angeles, I heard North Americans talk about horchata. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm like, what? Like my North American friends, my gringo friends, they know about horchata. It's so cool. And then in Nashville, there's a place that I love.
Mas Tacos. Oh, their horchata is amazing.
I know, it's so good.
We were there last
and I'm
week.
so sad that they don't have free refills.
I think they do one free refill.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know
So
that.
I didn't know that either. They told me this last
That's
time.
amazing.
So anyway.
Yeah. So things like that, little simple things like that make me hopeful for the future. Like the friends are eating corn like with mayonnaise, like the Mexican style. And I don't know, man. We see it in the movies. We see it in our culture. We are slowly becoming even a more diverse world for the good. And that's why I want to tell, I guess, people too. It's like we have differences are not necessarily something bad. It's not a threat to your security.
Yeah.
We also bring new colors that you probably didn't know you wanted or you wanted to have in your life. It's like Steve Jobs said one time, people don't know what they want until you give them to them.
Yeah.
I'm probably quoting it wrong, but I feel like most people don't know that they need some Latin in their life. Look, we are very happy people. We have food for everything, We eat for every single occasion. We are very loud and we dance, There's a place here in Nashville called Plaza Mariachi. They host this Thursday night salsa night,
Wow.
where you see all these people dancing salsa music. So that's the beauty of this country. And that's why I love this country so much, is because you have everything. You have a little bit of every part of the world come together in a city, And Nashville is a smaller city, but if you go to New York, you find everything from every part of the world, every corner of the world. And that's why I'm so hopeful for this country, for our lives in general. I love it.
Wow, I just love that conversation with Gustavo. He is truly one of the most genuine and kind people I've ever met, and I loved getting to spend an hour diving into his story, diving into his music, diving into this complex idea. You should absolutely, hands down, check out his music on Spotify or wherever you stream music. You can just search Gustavo Guerrero, it'll come right up. It's wonderful, and I'm already loving his new single, Promised Land, that just came out. You should also absolutely follow Gustavo on Instagram at Gustavo Guerrero. And please, if you enjoyed this conversation, share about it on your Instagram story or wherever else you share things online. We always love seeing what resonated with people, and it really helps people find the show. But also, this conversation probably is bringing up a lot of thoughts and ideas around some current events. And so if this is a helpful tool for you, or if you have things that you want to say about this, share about it. We would love to join the conversation. If you're new to Sounds Good, we would love for you to stick around. If you like this conversation in particular, you'd also love my conversation with Jonathan Moya, who shared on his episode about his project to document the US-Mexico border with his brother and all of the things that they learned on their journey. You can find this episode and more than 100 other episodes by searching for Sounds Good on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure that you hit subscribe to keep getting more inspiring conversations with incredible people delivered to your phone while you sleep. This podcast is created by me, Branden Harvey, as a part of Good, 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 a community that believes in the power of celebrating good news and becoming good news. Chad Meckles-Navely and the team at CM Studio edit and mix the show. You can get lots more helpful stories by following us everywhere at GoodGoodGoodCO. We also create a beautiful quarterly newspaper that celebrates the people, ideas, and movements that are changing the world for the better. You can order it today. Check it out and see what else we do at GoodGoodGood at goodgoodgood.co. And on that note, that is a wrap for this week's episode. Go out and dive into some nuanced conversations this week. Show some empathy towards others. And we'll be back with another inspiring story from an incredible person. Sound good?